of La Penta, it's WICR.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Vault. I'm your host with the most, Jersey Joe Archino, and very excited. Last week didn't really get on the air as much as I wanted to. Very busy, but there was one story I absolutely wanted to get to, and now we finally have time, so let's get right into it. Obviously, last week, one of the headlines was Andrew Luck's contract option being picked up by the Colts, and if you listen to this program a lot, if you follow me on Twitter at SportsVaultIona, you know how big of a fan I have of this guy, Andrew Luck. I mean, I just think the thing that impresses me the most about him is I think when you look at the Colts right now, this is one of the worst rosters in terms of collective talent in the NFL. In terms of defensive playmakers, in terms of playmakers on offense, they lack depth everywhere on this football team. I mean, you look at some of the decisions they made with Trent Richardson. You look at some of the things that happened that Reggie Wayne will come back. Now, they in the offseason, they kind of brought in Frank Gore. They bring in Andre Johnson. But again, here's the problem. Frank Gore, up there in age, very old, a lot of wear and tear on his tires. Andre Johnson, tremendous wide receiver, but again, he's up there in age. Is he really that much of an upgrade over a guy like a Reggie Wayne? I still think, now Reggie Wayne clearly last year, he just lost it. I mean, we really could tell that he just didn't have that explosiveness anymore, or that just ability to just make those plays that we were so used to seeing. But I think Andre Johnson still got a little bit more of a step on him, but not by that much. I mean, they're both over 30-year-old receivers who've got a lot, and especially with Andre Johnson, who's a guy who's always struggled with injuries during his career, I still don't think the Colts are surrounding Luck with the talent that he needs now. He has dramatically improved every single year, which is hard to do when you're as good as this guy is. But, I mean, his first season, a little bit heavy with the turnovers. Second season, dramatically cut it down. I mean, if you look at the way that his career has gone, I mean, first year out of the playoffs in the first round. Then the next year, winning a playoff game, losing to the Patriots. Then this year, getting to the AFC Championship game against Peyton Manning's Broncos. And, of course, losing to the Super Bowl champion Patriots. But still, the fact that Luck was able to take this roster with the talent that's on there to the AFC Championship game just shows you how good he is. Now, in terms of his fifth-year option, which they picked up for 2016, it's a $16.155 million guaranteed for injury. And we did hear a little bit after the Super Bowl, Adam Schefter was reporting that the Colts were trying to make him the highest-paid quarterback and player, I believe, in NFL history. And look, I mean, we know how difficult it is in this league today because of salary caps to really build a very competitive team. I mean, your quarterback, is going to be paid incredibly high, and he's going to take up a big cap out of your salary situation. But I mean, nobody affects the game more. If you don't have a quarterback, you do nothing. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Colts. You stack this roster up against almost every other team in the playoffs last year. It's probably the worst. I mean, think about it. You look at what the Seahawks, how good their roster was. The Patriots, their roster. Even the Cincinnati Bengals, who've gotten bounced out of the first round the last 3 seasons, have a better roster than the Colts do. Now, some people might think that's crazy, but just think about it. You've got playmakers on both sides of the ball, tremendous playmakers. A.J. Green on offense. You've got running backs like Giovanni Bernard. You've got guys like Geno Atkins on defense. You've got playmakers everywhere, and that's something the Colts just don't have. I mean, come on, T.Y. Hilton is his best option in wide receiver. He makes a guy like T.Y. Hilton. He makes a guy like Dwayne Allen. He makes a guy like Dontez Moncrief. You would never even hear these guys' names if it wasn't for Andrew Luck. And I just think, I still worry that, I equate it all the time to the LeBron James situation we saw his first time around in Cleveland. I think for so much, Cleveland just kind of was sitting around just starstruck by how good this guy was. He was so good that he fooled them and made them think they were better than they were. And they never surrounded him with the talent he needed. He was never going to win a championship. Even if he'd stayed in Cleveland, he would have never won a championship there. He brought an NBA roster, the worst NBA roster in finals history, and lost to the Spurs. You'll never see a player who takes a roster that bad again to the NBA finals. And we've seen it, when we're seeing it now with Andrew Luck, I worry that he's so good and he makes this Colts team look so much better than they are. Because I got to be honest, folks, again, just print out a page of their roster and circle the playmakers. You're not going to find a lot of them, and I just think it's all on Andrew Luck. He will, of course, get his big contract. I mean, you know he's going to be paid. He probably will be the highest paid quarterback. I mean, you look at how young he still is, how much more room he has to grow, which is probably the more impressive thing. I mean, this guy is only going to get better, and I think once you start to properly, and that's one thing, too, the Colts really can't afford to miss in the draft this year. I mean, this is a huge draft. I mean, I saw a couple of betting lines right after the Super Bowl, and I think the Colts are right up there, either favored to win the Super Bowl next year or at least get there. But I was really surprised because I just don't see it. With this roster right now, with the moves they've made in the offseason, I just don't buy it. And I think unless they really hit on the draft, which they have to, they cannot afford to miss in this draft. This is it. This is the defining period for them. You've got to start to get this roster back. It's been 3 years now. We look at Andrew Luck, and that is the start of the rebuild. Peyton Manning is hurt. You part ways with him. You draft Andrew Luck. That's the start of a new generation. 3 years in now, this is still a roster in rebuild mode, and that's a little bit too long for me. Once you get to that 4th year, you can't have this roster that's still in essentially a rebuilding roster. You need to bring in more talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, it's honestly quite disheartening. I mean, I'm not a Colts fan, but I just enjoy watching Andrew Luck, and I want him to win because I saw with LeBron James how he struggled so much. I mean, with the guys. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with the guys he had. I mean, I like this Andrunas Ilgauskas. I like the guys like Mo Williams. But, I mean, those aren't guys who are good enough to win an NBA title. LeBron, it was all on him, all on his shoulders, and it's part of the reason I never really faulted him that much for leaving for Miami, because he carried that team with every fiber of his being for so long, and Dan Gilbert and ownership were just not rewarding him, not surrounding him with the talent he needed to legitimately win a title. And I just don't think that's fair to players who are transcendent like this, because for all intents and purposes, Andrew Luck is a transcendent talent. He's going to be up there when it's all said and done with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. You just look at his presence. You look at him, his physical status, everything he can do on the football field, just his ability to dominate, and just he can do it all. There's really not a fault in his game, and it's just been such a fun time watching him grow, watching him develop. But this is it for the Colts. I mean, they pick up his 5th-year option. Next year is huge for them. I think it's really big for their coaching staff. I think for Chuck Pagano, I think this really is a big year. I mean, if they don't really do something convincing, I don't know if he'll be back there. And I've always worried about that a little bit too. I mean, I think when Bruce Arians was there, that was probably, they looked like they were going in the best direction. And I've had my doubts at times about Pagano. I like Pagano. I think he's a great guy. I really like him, but again, I just have my doubts sometimes about him and his strengths as a head coach for this football team. But there's a lot of questions for the Colts. This draft is huge for them. Andrew Luck's option is picked up, and we certainly thought we might see a massive deal in terms of his contract extension, but he will play one more year. And one of the things that also shows you the guy's character is just this will not be a distraction at all during the season. I really think this is a guy who really knows and separates work, and he really knows where his priorities lie. It will not be a distraction to it at all. I think he's just a guy he's kind of boring, and boring is good when you're a quarterback in the NFL. Peyton Manning is boring. Tom Brady is boring. Andrew Luck is boring. I want my quarterbacks to be boring because the only thing that matters is football, and clearly that is the theme in all of their lives. But that is going to do it for this segment. Back later in the day with any breaking news we have. But thank you for listening, and everyone enjoy the day.